saw how complicated this case was. A lot of digital evidence, a lot of forensic evidence, and this team behind me put it together in a way that a jury could understand, and they did it with professionalism and skill, the type that you will only see in a modern prosecutor's office like that we have here in Fairfax County. So at the end of the day, I am very, very pleased that we are able to stand here successfully having gotten justice for Joe Ryan and Christine Banfield. So who has questions? Yeah.
Steve, how would you describe someone who would not only carry out his murder, make up a story like he did, and then get on the witness stand and tell it again?
It's monstrous. I mean, that's really what it is. It's monstrous. I mean, we are the safest jurisdiction, safest large jurisdiction anywhere in America, meaning we don't have a lot of homicides, but I've been doing this job for a while, and I can tell you that this defendant stood out to me highest above all the other murder cases that we've done in my 6 years here.
Steve, in Juliana's proffer, there were, obviously that was 4 hours long, there was a lot of details, and there was a lot that your office chose maybe not to get into. Talk about what you wanted to highlight for this jury, what you thought was needed to successfully prosecute this case, and maybe some things that you chose not to introduce as evidence.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot in this case. There were a lot of rabbit holes to run down. We knew two things going into this case. The case was about the blood. This case was always going to be in the blood. You heard it right from Jenna's opening statement. This case was about the blood. We knew that before we even charged this case. The second thing is we want it to be surgical. We want it to be in, we want it to be out. We didn't need to go through every single little thing. We didn't want to confuse the jury. We didn't want to burden them. We didn't want to put them to sleep. What we really wanted is we wanted the high level stuff. And you saw that. You saw us focus on the blood. You saw us use Juliana or have Juliana come up there to give flavor to what happened in that room. And then we used the blood, we used the digital forensics, we used everything else to support that and give flavor to that. So I think we asked for 4 weeks, but as we got into this trial, we realized that we could do it much quicker and much more effectively than if we took all 4.
She has always maintained backing up Brendan Banfield until the very last minute here, and almost saying that you guys were too tunnel focused. Without Juliana's proffer, I mean, do you think we could have gone to this result?
I think we can. As a matter of fact, we were planning for it. If you take a look at the timeline of the case, we did not authorize charges against Brendan Banfield until after we got the blood analysis done. That is what we were waiting for. And it wasn't until 2 months after we got the blood and we indicted Brendan for these crimes that Juliana decided to proffer and cooperate with us. So we had planned to go forward with just the blood evidence and everything else, and we felt that even with that, we could have put this case on. Now, of course, as a prosecutor, if you have somebody in the room and they want to proffer, they want to turn state's evidence, you're not going to turn that down. You're going to investigate that. We did that proffer. She told us some things that we had not known. We did check on her story. We felt confident in that story, confident enough to offer her the plea deal that we gave her and put her on the stand as part of our case in chief.
Can I ask Jenna a quick question?
Briefly.
Yeah, let me get the jury and then I'll...
Did you get an opportunity to talk to Mr. Ryan and Christine's family? What did you say to them?
I have before. I did not get a chance to today. And I'm always very hesitant to speak for the victims' families. I know that it was a very, very emotional day. I imagine that maybe we'll be speaking again in the future, but I hope that this verdict gives them some sense of peace and puts them somewhere on the path towards healing after this tragic, tragic homicide. Sorry?
What's your message to Banfield's daughter?
God, I mean, what do you say to a child in that situation? I don't know if I have a message for her, but I have a hope for her. I have a hope that she spends the rest of her life with people who love her and know that there were people in this world who loved her. And I hope that she always carries that in her heart. Now, Bob, you had a question for Jenna?
Yeah, sure.
Take us through the strategy that was talked about during the trial of arresting her first to get to him.
Sure. Well, there was originally a belief that was born pretty early in the investigation that she was an accomplice of Mr. Banfield's, that there was a plan. As our detectives uncovered more evidence that supported the possibility of the plan, the idea was formed to arrest her based on the evidence that we knew we had, because it would be a successful prosecution, but also with the hope that she would end up seeing the light and coming to us with her story. It was something that we obviously had to wait quite a while for, and to be honest, had given up on at the time that we charged Mr. Banfield. We weren't going to wait anymore. We were providing her with the discovery that she needed to be able to defend herself in her case, and so there was no expectation that she would turn. It was just really happenstance that we were reached out to by her counsel that she was finally ready to talk.
You mentioned in your closing.
Face to face.
Sorry, say again?
Is that like you had a chance to question him finally on the stand?
I did.
face to face. How do you describe it?
I think that everyone has commented on what was so obvious, that he was not truthful, that he was cold, that he behaved oddly in response to questions that should have elicited emotion, that he never spoke of himself as Christine's husband, that he didn't speak lovingly of his wife, that he showed absolutely no human emotion that we expected to see of someone in his position.
You mentioned your closing.
Sorry.
You mentioned your closing how he wanted to be with Juliana, and hence the possible motive here. Outside of that, is there anything else as far as why he would commit this?
You know, it's really challenging to try to put yourself in someone like Mr. Banfield's mind. And I don't know that I want to try that hard, to be completely honest. I think that he was obviously hoping for a life with Juliana, and he didn't see a way to accomplish that without executing his wife.
Are you surprised that Brendan took the stand? Do you believe that actually
Yes.
helped
Yes, I, having been a defense attorney for years, I think I would have counseled against him taking the stand, but, Mr. Carroll didn't have a lot to work with, and at the end of the day, if his client wanted to testify, he had the absolute right to do so.
What was the thinking behind giving Juliana such a sweetheart deal?
So I wouldn't necessarily describe it as a sweetheart deal. She does face 10 years in prison. That has not yet been determined. It is obviously a reduction, and it is certainly reflective of her cooperation. But in order to encourage her to tell the truth, there had to be something. I think that the agreement that she entered into will hopefully allow for the judge to pass judgment on her in a way that is measurable. It will certainly never account for the lives that she was responsible for taking, but I think that the amount of time that she'll serve will be determined by Judge Ascarati, and I'm sure it will be appropriate.
So she hasn't agreed to your recommendation?
Correct. The judge is free to sentence her as she chooses within the statutory limitations.
It's 10 years, even the max is still a gift, right, for someone who's plotted and set up Christine and Joe Ryan. And there's a lot of violence in this murder.
That is absolutely true.
Thank you, Jenna.
Yeah.
I also wanted to add to this. You guys have access to Jenna if you have more questions for her. But no, I think it's really, really important that we don't characterize this as a quote-unquote sweetheart deal. This is the work of being a prosecutor. She still is taking accountability for homicides. When you take a look at what the relative culpability is, I think that where we have landed is appropriate. And quite frankly, Juliana, by testifying, answered a lot of questions, not only for us, but for the jury. Let's not forget how important her testimony may have been to some of those jurors. So her still facing up to 10 years in prison is very, very significant, and well worth the cost to make sure that Brendan Banfield was convicted for a crime where it is a mandatory life sentence. As the law is written right now, Brendan Banfield will not walk free for the rest of his natural life.
Is there anything else that a lot of times evidence does not get into a trial? What else should people know about this guy?
Oh, you're right.
That you were not able to present to the jury that had convinced you guys he was guilty?
Well, I hate to disappoint you, but for us, the evidence spoke volumes. We got our evidence in, what we thought was important, and I think that, in many ways, we're proud that we let the evidence speak for itself. So there's not really a lot of things that were outside the purview of the jury that led us to some kind of conclusion about what he did or what he did not do. We take a lot of pride, and we know the police take a lot of pride in following the evidence wherever it leads.
What do you hope Brendan Banfield is sitting in there thinking about right now?
I've always, I've been a prosecutor for almost 15 years now. And I think about what goes through somebody's mind after they've been found guilty. And, quite frankly, my hope with this is that he realizes he didn't get away with it. And I know that sounds cliche, but I think through the evidence you can see a lot of things that he set up trying to get away with it, thinking that he was going to beat the system, trying to outsmart everybody. I hope he thinks that, and most of all, though, I hope he thinks about his wife and Joe and about what a heinous thing he did, because that's something that he is rightfully going to have to live with for the rest of his life. Any other? Yes, please. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Oh, yes. I'm sorry, I didn't.
They weren't here today, but they have been. They have been in the courtroom. Yes.
Sorry, you mean?
Steve,
yeah.
Rare to have cameras in the courtroom
yes.
here in Virginia, particularly in a criminal case. A whole big part of the world watching this.
Yeah.
What do you hope the takeaway is for people who don't, who've been watching this incredibly salacious story here in our neighborhood? What do you hope the takeaway is for all these people that have been watching this play out?
Yeah, that's a great question, Drew. I think there are a couple takeaways that I hope they come away with. First of all, trials and this world, it's not law and order. It doesn't happen in half an hour. It's not black and white. There's a lot of work that goes into it. There's a lot of nuance. So I want them to understand what this work is. But I think the one thing I want people in this community to take away from is they got to see their justice system in action, right? They don't have to read about it, they get to see it. And I hope what they saw is a modern professional prosecutor's office doing a job with a very, very difficult case. I mean, the forensics, the blood, all of these things are very, very difficult to parse, to talk about, to explain to a jury. And the team behind me, quite frankly, they made it look easy. And I think that really speaks to the level of professionalism, not only in the prosecutor's office, but with the courts generally, as well as the investigation of the county police department, which is top notch. Bob, I'd love it. I honestly, I would not be opposed. We are proud of the work that we do here as a law enforcement apparatus in Fairfax County. We have nothing to hide. I would love everybody to see every one of our trials and see what goes into the decision making. We do almost 20,000 cases a year. And for people to really understand the nuance and how we agonize over a lot of these decisions to try to do justice, I think that would be great for this community to see. Any other questions? No? So, yes. Well, I guess it might be glib, but you if you watch the trial, you might have been able to see it. But no, but in all seriousness, no. We just have the evidence, and quite frankly, our job is to follow the evidence. And we heard what Juliana said. We heard what Brendan said. Those are our clues into what happened. But at the end of the day, we presented the evidence to the jury. And we're just very, very pleased that we're able to stand here knowing that we got justice for Joe and Christine. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it, guys. Yeah.